What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear, but I'm feeling foggy. My future seems hidden. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Evan. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Judgement Seesaw. Once again, I'm your host, Ronnie Evans, and I'm here with another fantastic and very special guest for me. Personally, a lot of love for the TSA and everyone under the Sports Affiliation umbrella, but specifically, I've got you, Evan. We're going to dive into some mental health stuff together. And before I plug you and let you go plug everything else you've got going on, if anyone's watching and this is your first time, the concept, the name of the show, the Judgement Seesaw, comes from economics. It's been parlayed by the therapy world, and it helps people understand how to listen better and try and empathize and put yourself in someone else's shoes. And it works like this. If you are judging, you're not understanding. And if you are being truly understanding, you're not going to be judging. And it's funny. It's actually a social paradigm. And if you want to go try it sometime, you can sit tomorrow at work, sit there and try to judge someone that's talking and understand them at the same time. And you'll find that your brain really, really struggles with doing that. And so what side of the Judgment Seesaw are we on at all times? Try to think about it. You'll be a better person and you'll live a better life for it. And it's all about understanding, and I want to understand you a little bit more, Evan. So let's give you a little intro, man. You're with the TSA. You've been floating around for a while. I appreciate you and your work. But what do you have going on in the fantasy sports world? And then we'll dive into the mental health stuff.
Nice, man. First off, thank you, Ronnie, man. It's a pleasure to hop on, and just everything that you're doing with mental health, man. The AI stuff too, man. I mean, if you're interested in any AI, man, hit up Ronnie. He is very much in the rabbit hole, and in a good way. He is bringing a lot of insight and how it applies, to fantasy and anything else you want to do, man. He'll show you how to use it for whatever it is that you're doing. But mental health, Ronnie, is huge. For me, it's something that I didn't always view it as, an essential thing, but I believe we all have some type of struggle with it, right? And
right.
Maybe some of it was masculinity, right? Whatever it was, there was a time in my life where I didn't really believe that mental health necessarily applied, but that has been a big change for me over the last few years of my life, growing up, dealing with life. And so I just thank you, man, for bringing the awareness that you are, getting people on. And there's nothing like real life experience from different people that show all different sides of mental health. And that's what I think you're doing, man, is this isn't a one size fits all model. It's anything that can bother myself or anybody as a person. And the opportunity to come on and share. And, hopefully, I'm sure each show, man, there's people that you don't even know are hearing something that's helping them move forward and not backwards, man. And you'll probably never know, but I can guarantee that that's happening each and every time. And I hope that happens a little bit tonight for us, man. But,
yeah.
The fantasy side of things, TSA, man, it's been, almost a couple years. Myself, JC Money and at IDP Iggy, kind of branched off from something we were doing and met those guys with a different group. And, we wanted to create a positive community, man, for fantasy sports and for betting, and something we felt like was missing in where we were at, and something that's missing a lot of times in the space already. I know we'll get into kind of some of that. We just launched our Discord. That's kind of the newest thing we've been working on, kind of branching over to the Discord community to really just create a platform there where we can talk, NFL, fantasy related, just NFL, talk basketball. We're talking a lot of playoff basketball right now, a little bit of baseball. We hope to branch out into other sports and get other people in that, bring in hockey, bring in golf, things that we don't necessarily.
Badminton.
Hey, whatever it is, man, rugby, freaking, it doesn't matter, right, man? Just a community where people can come and share. And the great thing about the Discord is you can go in and click the badminton tab. You don't have to click the NFL tab. And so we're really spending a lot of time, on trying to get that, build that up, and just make that a place where we can kind of to bring the community and of course, still use, X, Twitter as what it's there for, but kind of a nice spot for everybody to come and be able to participate. So that's been the biggest thing. Now that the draft is over, obviously we're getting into the meat of, fantasy football. I know there's people that are into the meat of it throughout the off season too. I do other sports, so I kind of don't start picking up till this time, right after the draft, after the landing spots. So we're getting into, putting out those rankings, doing some, got a project we're working on with Greg Kellogg, kind of delving into past ADP, also the results of what those ADP were and the value of taking running backs, wide receivers. So working on a cool project of data from previous years and how ADP kind of applies to where they finish and where you can really find the value. So yeah, man, just trying to stay busy, man, trying to provide some good content and also have a good time, man. It's a good outlet too.
Well, hey, just a shout out, Greg, right? He is just like one of the best people in the industry. There's a reason he's a Hall of Famer. He's been around forever. He's become a good friend of mine too, like through the Sports Philly and the FF Expo, which is where I met JC and got to know Iggy a little bit better. And y'all's whole crew does great. Selfishly, I just want to shout y'all out my experience for the viewers out there. Like JC, Evan, and Iggy, don't have to go into any sort of details or anything, but you guys wanted to change for a variety of reasons with your experience with the industry, and you wanted to create a community for people to like do things a little bit differently. And I think you have succeeded. And it's really, really been fun for me to be a part of that community and like help out where I can, but mostly just be there to like joke around and feel like I have a place to belong in the industry while I worked through mental health stuff. The Sports Affiliate has helped with that in a larger way than any other site over the last year. And so the Sports Affiliate for me, like, pretty dear to my heart. I really do love you guys and I appreciate everything you're doing. And if you guys are watching right now and you're not following them, they're on X at the Sports Affiliate. If you type in the Sports Affiliate on YouTube, it'll pop up. You'll find it. Sports Affiliation. And it's IDP Iggy, SoCal Ball Nerd is Evan, and then JC Money Design is JC. So I love you guys and I appreciate you. Can I ask you a question without going into any specifics you want to, but can you share a little bit about your journey into fantasy sports and like how it has shaped your career and personal life?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a sports junkie, through and through. I mean, I grew up playing sports, started playing fantasy football probably about I think 2000 or 2001 with, some friends in high school, just doing the basic kind of Yahoo version or whatever, it was at the time. And have been doing that ever since, right? I mean, I played it. I didn't get into really the community that we have, basically on Twitter through TSA or even before I was with TSA until just a couple years ago. It wasn't something I guess nobody I talked to really was in that space, right? So, but all the while, I was still doing the same stuff I do now, right? Still digging into the same stats, still looking at, ADP, still looking at target share and routes ran and some of those things that, how to find, the value. I still wanted to win my leagues, right? I still wanted to enjoy the hobby I was doing. And so a couple years ago, man, I just decided to hop on, Twitter one night and hopped into a space, and Iggy and JC were in there. And so I'm like, well, they're talking football. Let me grab a mic, and say something and said something on a Saturday night and then kind of talked with them afterwards. And ever since then, it's now been just kind of translating what I already kind of like to do on my own time by myself into this online community and turning it into where putting some of my thoughts onto, tweets and into articles and into content and videos and betting and whatever else it might be. And so, yeah, man, that just kind of took me from what I was already doing, but now with the community of people to do it. And so I do, never regretting, right? But kind of like, man, I do wish I found it sooner. Right. But,
Right.
It all happened when it did. I'm grateful for those two guys, man, and grateful for everything that we're doing. But, it was meant to happen when it did. And so I'm enjoying it.
Well, I remember meeting JC at the expo last year, and he was like, "Oh, I got this new thing going on. We're really trying to build a community and so on and so forth." I'll be honest. I was like, "This guy seems really nice. I'll see if his idea is any good or not." And that's just like the nature of the game with fantasy. Everyone wants to build a community. Everyone wants to have a website, and everyone wants to do content. You guys did it. And so I'm really proud of you. And I think that the trajectory looks fantastic for you guys for the future. Things are going really well. I'm not actually posting this on Facebook, but shout out to you guys. If anyone's watching that's on Facebook, go follow them, especially for the NBA coverage. It's like a pretty wildly active viewership for all the content you're doing over there. And shout out to you guys for that too.
Yeah, man, it's fun. The NBA playoffs it's a fun time. It's when the basketball season really picks up. And yeah, man, JC's been hosting, some watch parties for the Nuggets and the T-Wolves, which has gotten interesting, and it's a fun time, man. And like you said, everybody wants to kind of create that community. And so it's difficult, but also it's like, hey, we all enjoy doing this as well. So sometimes it's really tough because it's like, man, we're spinning our wheels, or, oh, we haven't done enough, or this and that. But at the end of the day, man, like, we did step out. We have created something. We have this project, this baby that is ours. And, a lot of times, man, the results that we want aren't always there, but we keep going, and we've got so many great people, man. And Ronnie, I can say, man, just so you know, for me, having someone like you in our community where I get to directly see somebody who's open, vulnerable, sharing about mental health, as someone who has, struggled with it plenty, you make it easier to be open and vulnerable. You make it easy to accept some of my struggles. Like, man, I can think about you sometimes, right? With how open you are. So I just want you to know, man, the impact that you've had on me
Thanks,
and
man.
us as a group, whether you know it or not, it's massive.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that this show, the Judgment Seesaw, can kind of have the same sort of evergreen effect. I'll be doing this again every year now. My plan is the month of May, like this channel will be 11 months of the year is all AI content. And then for 1 month of the year, I'm just switching it over to the thing that really like matters above all else, and it's how we're doing between the years. And so, speaking of that, your backstory with regards to mental health, I know you mentioned earlier you spent most of your life. It wasn't something that was at the forefront of your mind. Over the last 5 years or so, it sounds like it has gotten more prominent. Can you share a little bit about your story and your experience, any mental health challenges that you encountered, and also like if you've seen anything else that people have gone through?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to provide a little bit of insight, I mean, I'm 38 years old, right? So, I spent a lot of my younger days from, really just kind of high school on, partying, partaking in, the drugs and that atmosphere. And for me to not spend too much time on it, that kind of parlayed into, a life of drug addiction. It just became something that was what it was, right? I look back about 23 years old trying to stop using some of what I was using, and like, oh, holy crap, I think I'm not just having a good time, right? Like, I'm really having trouble with this. I can't stop, and that was kind of a lot of that is why I think mental health wasn't something that was awareness to me, because I'm like, well, I just have a drug problem, right? Like,
Mm,
I use drugs, and I know I like to use drugs, and I can't stop. But once I stopped the drugs, or tried to stop doing the drugs, right, and that's been an ongoing journey in itself,
sure.
is I realized that the problems that I was covering up, well, now they're a lot more evident, right? Because I'm not able to subside some of those feelings. I'm not able to numb them and not care, right? And just kind of keep moving forward. And so, I was able to kind of get clean for a period of time when I was around 23. It didn't last long. Did the same thing at about 28. Then again at 30, and then I got clean for about 4.5 years. And yeah, I mean, I guess things were going well. I was really actively involved in a church at the time, and this isn't a for or against any type of church or religion. That's just what I was doing at the time. It kept me busy. But then there were some things that took me away from that, and so I stopped being busy. I'd never dealt with really the root of everything inside of me. I was just busy for 4 years. And it didn't take too long for me to kind of be like, well, I've been good, right? Like, I can manage whatever I want to do. So I was like, cool, man, I'll have a beer. And that didn't send me off on some spiral that night. I wasn't like out, just
Right.
gone on a good one. But my mind and the addiction that I struggle with, and anybody who's familiar with it, that disease of addiction, man, it created that as an option for me. And so rather than going the direction of dealing with myself, it was more and more of going back down that substance direction, right? And then I kind of look back and like, holy crap, here I am again, right? Back down this path of using substances instead of really kind of digging to the root, really trying to learn who I am as a person. And yeah, man, it was a struggle, and it was kind of off and on. And then when I got into, fast forward to a couple of years ago, when I got into the Twitter space and the fantasy industry and met JC and met Iggy, I was, and I've always worked through this time. I've always, kind of done what I need to do to an extent, right? Because I could always have done more if I wasn't living that type of life. But
Sure.
functioning, if you will, for the most part, right? And so I was working, doing my thing, but I was having my ups and downs with drinking too much, with using, with doing whatever else that I shouldn't have been doing. And so putting that together with the industry and trying to start something and being in a place where, okay, obviously I want more out of my life, right? I'm looking for something to fulfill me. I have been forever. Now I found this community that's tied to sports, and I love sports. And now I've got these people that love it. And I also get to create something, and I can make this content, and we can turn this into some big thing and be this name in an industry, and maybe it be a career, and maybe even make money, and all those big dreams and aspirations that are great. But like everything, they don't come overnight. But yet I'm still in my mind this person, right? I want instant gratification, right? I haven't dealt with patience. I haven't dealt with pursuing these things and being okay with not knowing the outcome, but putting in consistent value regardless of the outcome. I'm like, man, I put in 5 days of work and I don't see anything, so let me give up, right? Like, and so when we first got going, man, I was gung ho, but my mental health side of things was like, man, I'm putting in all this work. I don't feel like everyone else is maybe putting in the same effort. Maybe they were at a different place, or maybe it was just the way I saw it, but it was so much for me, man. I felt like I was doing so much and not getting anything out of it, that it led me to drink a lot more than I was. It led me to be more angry and frustrated about what was going on rather than enjoy it. And this was just a little over a year ago, pretty much. And so I stepped away from TSA. I stepped away from, Twitter at the time, because I was just not in a good place, man, because I kept looking for it to fulfill me and I wasn't getting that out of it. And it just frustrated me so much, man, that I didn't know how to deal with it, right? I didn't have a balance. So as far as my journey with the sports, industry and mental health, I was looking for it to kind of replace a lot of what I was struggling with, but it's impossible to do that without really doing the internal work about why those things frustrate me, right? Or having a balance, or, it's like, I'm going to put this down, I'm going to do this and just fully replace it. And it's just not that black and white, right? It's not that easy. So, yeah, man, I know that was probably kind of a lot in a nutshell there, but
No, you're good, man. I think I want to just, before I even respond to everything else, I want to really congratulate you on something. You talk through a lot of pitfalls and roadblocks and things that are like your life had to shift. And it was because of something you were experiencing or doing. It was kind of a me problem. And that is often the case with mental health issues. And not once through, I have to go back and look and make sure, but I don't think you at one time talked negatively about yourself. And that's really, really cool. I find that impossible. My therapist fusses at me every time I talk to him because I can't help but beat myself up when I'm recalling growth that I've gone through. So that was cool. That aspect of it, I don't want people to overlook that. And also, addiction is fighting through, and being a recovering addict is, in my opinion, the hardest thing a person can do. And to do that successfully, you're in the 5 to 10% of anyone that's ever dealt with the issue. And so for you, having the ups and downs, and as I did 500 days of sobriety and about 5 years ago when I was resetting and trying to figure out my stuff, and I hundreds of AA and NA meetings, and the takeaway always that I took from it was, well, regardless of what your mental affliction is, whether it is addiction or chronic depression or whatever, we're always just a set of guardrails away from veering off the road and going back into the ditch. And for you, having the wherewithal to step away a year ago and say, hey, I need to give myself a boundary from all this stuff that's making things mentally feel screwy for me, is we go back to the first episode of this show with Nick Whalen. He is a counselor, and he's that is the number one thing for me. And what I would tell people in the industry is to set proper boundaries and give yourself time and prioritize yourself over the content and the community, even in a lot of ways. If you're not healthy, everything else you're doing is just masking that. So I'm really proud of you. That was a very, very interesting and good share. And Brendan Booth is also a guy. He's been through similar things. He does addiction counseling. We've had a lot of discussions on that on the show so far. For you, what is your How do you cope with it now? How's your relationship to the industry? What is changing? What are you looking at for the future?
So yeah, thank you, Ronnie. And I will say too, I just on Monday I celebrated a year clean
Let's
completely. So
go. Congrats,
yeah, so
man.
I did get to celebrate that. I do participate, in recovery, and it's a big part of my life as well. I mean, it helps me with that balance. So it's cool, man. I went to a meeting and took a medallion, and got to do all that, which is fun, man. It's because, again, like I said, I've always looked to be a part of, right? I've always looked to fill that void, and that's something like that gives me those guardrails, and it's also something that gives me a feeling of being a part of, and it keeps me in check with that balance. I love it, man.
Tears of joy, man. I'm genuinely, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, man, because I've never really done that. Even when I had the 4.5 years, I wasn't in recovery. So I wasn't, participating in that stuff. Like I said, I was in the church and doing other things. So
Yeah.
it was a big moment, man. My wife and my youngest son were there. He's 5, and like, he doesn't know, right? He's on his tablet, but like, he knows that I've been kind of away, like getting better and just right. Cause I want to be, because when I do those things, man, I obviously take it out on the people closest to me, right? And so I don't just want to be a better content creator, man. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. And sometimes it's hard to do that in the moment in everyday life when I'm struggling, right? So I have to step away from that too. And I've stepped away from that area partially to become better for my family, right? And so it's kind of its own little weird journey with that too, right? Because not necessarily being together every day and some of those things, right? That's not normal, but it's something for our journey and my journey that's making myself and us better as a family, right? It's what's needed. So that was pretty cool, man. And so yeah, you talked about like, not talking negatively. And so now I battle with those things still, right? I'm not just like, cool, I'm back in it, like life's good. Heck no. Like, I struggle with it. And now, though, I do have that balance, right? I'm like, okay, am I spending all this time on Twitter or all this time in the community and forsaking some of these meetings, right? Or these other parts of my life that I know help keep me centered, right? So I'm able to, because I'm off of those substances, I have a much clearer mind that I can recognize, right? Okay, I'm off today, right? Like, when's the last time I did a meeting, right? When's the last time I did some journaling? When's the last time I fed like the positive side of my recovery, as opposed to, even though I enjoy some of these things, right? Like, it's too much fantasy, Evan. It's too much, betting. It's too much whatever fulfillment from this other thing, that if you don't get what you want over here, Evan, you're going to start feeling the same way you were before. So maybe
Yes. Yeah.
check out, go check in, get a little refill, spiritually aligned, and come back. And what's hard about that though, Ronnie, is like, am I doing enough here? Am I doing enough there? And then I want the results in the fantasy. So I'm like, well, if I'm not putting out some content, or man, I really wanted to do this article and I didn't do it, I'm like, I start to beat myself up, right? I start to be my harshest critic. And so I still do those things, man. That's no different, other than I'm just in such a better place because I am filling my cup mentally, that I just have a much better awareness, and I just want to be clear that it's still a struggle, man. And it's still a struggle in between the ears. You say that, right? What's going on here? And the way I talk to myself a lot of times is very harsh. And I feel like I'm not, enough at times, right? And I feel like I'm not putting in enough effort to be where I want to be. So then I'm like, well, I need to put in more effort, right? But then if I put in that effort and don't get what I want, then it makes me like, well, why am I doing it at all, kind of thing. And so in this past year, man, I mean, I took a while to come back, right? I didn't come back. A little bit of, to be honest, too, was kind of a little shame and guilt, right? Of having to step away. It's hard to come back and tell people close to you, like, hey, man, I had to step away because of my problem, right? Like, I'm a man, I'm full of pride, I'm full of ego. I want to succeed. I have this like, misconception of like perfectionism, that I'm the only person going through stuff, right? Or like, just because maybe someone else isn't saying something, that like they're going to judge me because I needed to step away and take care of myself. And what's cool, man, and shout out to JC and Iggy, man, it's like all they said, bro. And the whole time I'm like, should I come back today? Should I message them today? Like, I
Yeah,
should have just done
I
it the
get it,
first
yeah.
time, Ronnie, because I battled with it for days and days and days and days, probably weeks, and led this cycle of worry for no reason. And like all they said, man, was, "We're glad you're okay. All we care about is that you're okay."
Yeah.
Like, well, damn, why didn't I say something 3 weeks ago? Because I've been going crazy. But that's my mind, Ronnie. Like I play out those situations of worry that, you know, we know usually don't even come to fruition, right? But I'm worst case scenario, and a lot of that comes with a lot of my life. I made a lot of bad choices. I've self-sabotaged myself so much that I'm always waiting for that next, you know, bad thing to drop, and almost fearful of good things, fearful of good relationships, fearful of
Relate to
healthy
that.
outcomes, because I've never let myself walk into those outcomes. I've always blown it up before they've ever gotten that far, dude.
Have you ever heard the term anticipatory dread?
No, but
I actually, I don't know if it's actually a term. I use it all the time in therapy with my it's one of I that's it's really hard to deal with that. And so for people that are watching, if you're not somebody that goes through mental health and you're just watching this to kind of get in tune with what is going on, first of all, shout out to you. Second of all, no matter who you are, if you have mental health issues, and that is truly a umbrella, it's not just like bipolar people. It is anything that is negatively affecting the way that you think and operate is a mental health problem. That could be addiction, it could be diet, it could be like whatever. And so all of these disorders, they come with these voices in our head, and it's not like you have actual like split personalities, but these negative, intrusive voices that beat us up and tell us that things aren't going to work out and focus in on those, like you mentioned, the mistakes we've made in the past and the negative occurrences. And it's the power of positive thinking is like truly real and very, very impactful. But it is like, it's almost like a hippie kind of cliche, like, well, think positively thing, but it works and it's important. And you have so far throughout this entire episode, it seems like you have a really good grasp on that. And so again, I want to focus on that for everyone else that's watching. It's really helpful and it's important. Congrats on the year again. Toronto Dave just popped in and was like, congrats. So let's throw that back in. Speaking of positivity, like the TSA pretty much emphasizes and preaches positivity and inclusiveness. I'm curious if you can give any insights onto like why that is such a fundamental aspect of what you guys do.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of a perfect lead in. I feel like some of what I'm kind of like recapping what I was sharing a little bit, right? You know, in my head, and like I want to be a part of. I don't want to feel judged. I want to be able to go to a place where I can be myself, where I can be accepted. So, I mean, what is that? That's inclusiveness and positivity.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like perfect, just kind of natural lead in there to it. Like, it's important, man, because that's what I believe, man, at the core, right? It's like isolation sucks and loneliness sucks, and feeling like you can't be yourself or have a voice is a terrible place to be. And I think, you know, in the mental health world, a lot of people are in that place, and, you know, still it's kind of new to people, right? It's still not necessarily taboo, but like, oh, like, I don't, you know, therapy isn't, you know, for me, or that's for the weak, or, you know, like my mental health is fine. Like, I don't know, man, we all have some kind of struggles, man, that eat at us. And anything that if we're not doing something to positively feed something against that, it's eating at us in a negative way. And for some people, it might take a lot longer for that to show some effects. It might not show in the same way, but I firmly believe that everybody has some type of mental health struggle somewhere on the spectrum. And obviously where that is, how it's dealt with is completely different. But I think everybody finds a spot there. And that's not to judge anybody that thinks they don't. That's to welcome anybody that maybe feels like they aren't as bad as somebody else, or compare. Like, man, if it makes you struggle, share about it. If it
Yeah,
makes you
man.
struggle, it's real. Your feelings valid, your life experience is valid. Yeah, man, everybody is valid, bro. And so with TSA, my man, JC, I love you, brother. So, and like you said, you come in, and I don't think it's easy to come in and talk about mental health or be that guy that is bringing in AI or kind of be the oddball, if you will, to people sometimes. Like, I don't think that's easy, right? But you've been able to come in and be accepted and do that. And for anybody else, right? I think we've got, and I think they are on right now. Wendy and Carla are on the Game Changers. I think they just got going.
I know shout out to that. Listen, if you're watching this right now, you can always come back and revisit this. Go support Wendy and Carla. Hop over and come back and rejoin us afterwards. This will be posted on the YouTube. I thought we were going to be able to finish this and be like, hey,
I know they're a little earlier, but
Game.
on the Sports Affiliation YouTube, please go support them. Wonderful women. I mean, they're two of our strongest, most powerful people in the community, man, and they get great guests. They do a great show. And so, place for women as well, too, right? But just we've all been a part of a place where positivity and inclusiveness weren't necessarily at the core. At least it didn't seem like it, or it wasn't being, put into action, we thought. And so we want to be a place where people can come and just have a voice, man, however they want to, and not feel like they have to be. You don't have to write articles. You don't have to be a content creator. You don't have to do any of that. If you want to do that, hell yeah, the more the merrier. But like, if you're just a fan, or you just want to come in and have some people to hang out with, and you like sports or just one sport, like we said, like you want the badminton tab, like that's why the Discord, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. There's a place for everybody, and it's not always that the case, right? If you go into a group, sometimes it's got to be a specific thing, or you have to have these requirements or these things that you do to be a part of that group. And we don't want that. We like having a place for everybody, and where you can fit in, like where you don't feel like you don't fit in. And maybe you don't want to talk about everything that was going on, but you can be a part of in some form or fashion. And for me individually, like I said, man, fill in that void, being a part of, being able to speak freely and not be judged, which is still something I do struggle with, right? I mean, always wondering what people are going to say to what I share. And, is it going to come out this way? And so on. That's just a huge thing for me. I know as a person, I need that, Ronnie. So if I need that, A, other people got to need that. And B, if I need that, how can I not be someone that doesn't create something like that for other people when it's so important to me?
I love that. There's an interesting relationship between like what we truly desire, and for people that are really in tune with like their ikigai. I've brought up this phrase on the show before, but Japanese proverb about finding true happiness in life through a vocation. And if you look at the people that are the happiest, they're people that did exactly what you just described. This is what I want. I want to achieve that, and I want to share it with others. And if you could figure out what that thing is for you in your life and execute it and find a way to make it happen, then you're going to be happier regardless. But even still, even if you love something like the TSA and it's something you help build and you're a part of it and it's incredible and it's addressing these needs, as you alluded to, mental health for people with chronic issues, it's always there in the back. And you have to practice hygiene. And part of that is like making sure you don't get burnt out and let these things that you love become things that you what's the right word? Not regret, but don't love, for lack of a better term. And I think you're doing that well. And I want people who watch this episode to take away that lesson too. Like the power of positive thinking and forgiveness for yourself is really, really important. But then like forgiving yourself and knowing that other people love you and being in a community where you can trust that you can say, hey, I need a week. I'll be back. And people don't bat an eye. It's rare, but it's really, really cool. And it's not, this is not a rip on TSA at all, but I'm really happy that like you guys are not the only place in the industry that has a similar vibe, kind of like an open door policy with their employees or with their team members and community. But it's not like the most prevalent thing. In the end, it's a content creation and journalism sphere, and those are pretty cutthroat. So moving into like the cutthroat nature of the industry, unless you have anything to add to what I just said.
No. I mean, I guess I will just say that, yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's kind of that difference of like cramming in all this time and energy to get where you want to go. and being so pressured into doing that, as opposed to like stepping back and taking just that slower approach, which again, it's just harder to do sometimes because you want to get to these places. But I kind of just look at it as like even being in a workplace with people, right? Like if I have people working for me, I want people who can be the best version of themselves. And that means they need to go pick up their kids from school and work another hour later. Like,
Right.
not this 8 to 5, like, no, like whatever's going to help you be the best you, eventually that's going to get us to where we all want to go. And sometimes it's hard because it might be a slower process, right? But, it's, what is it, like the tortoise and the hare, right? Or
Right.
whatever, like, and
There's literal evidence now over in, I think it was Norway, but I might be
definitely
wrong.
not America.
Yeah, but one of those Scandinavian countries. They 2 years ago started play testing a 4-day work week, like as a requirement in certain areas. I might be butchering the story, but the point is they play tested with a 4-day work week. They studied it, and worker productivity, like for the company itself, output improved. And also, of course, the happiness of the workers improved. And those two things are intertwined. And so it's evident. I mean, everything you're saying is true. That's my anecdote on that. But looking away from like the positive side of things, content creation is tricky. You've alluded to like it can be negatively impacting when it gets to be too much on anyone, especially people like you and I who have personal struggles that are a little more slippery, a little more slippery of a slope than potentially other people. But how do you balance your professional responsibilities with like your personal life besides just having a free pass to kind of check in and out as you need, which is awesome?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of mentioned earlier, it's like make sure that I'm not in one or the other too much of the time, right? And not forcing myself, like if I didn't put out a certain amount of content or didn't do a certain amount of this, like it's okay, right? Like because for me especially, like I'm trying to not go back to using substances to
Sure.
fill my life, right? So it's like I try to have this kind of base of like, well, I didn't necessarily do this, but like I'm still moving forward in my life, and that's a hard thing to do because I feel like to move forward in the industry, like I have to be putting out content. I have to put myself out there to be seen or to provide some value. But also at the end of the day, like the amount that I put out doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to get something back any faster. Like is it really getting away from me? And even if it is getting away from me, what am I getting instead of that? And when I really tried to chase that side of it solely, like, let me just pump content, let me put out a video every day. Like I have to make sure that I'm something on camera, something on paper, something on the website. Dude, I got burnt out and I forsaked everything else in my life that even puts me in a place to be the person that can do that, right? Like to be in a good position to put out that content. Because even when I was doing it, like, was I really putting out quality? And I don't mean quality like, oh, I was right, or quality like just from the base of where I was operating. Because it was coming from a place of misery. It was coming from a place of like have to, right? Like it was coming from a negative place. It was coming from a black, dark, negative hole and not a place of like I get to. And that's just way too much. So yeah, man, I just try to balance as much as I can. And it's not easy, right? But if I don't go on for a day or don't do something, I don't make sure like, okay, I have to log into X today and make sure I retweet everything. I don't have to log in and make sure I put something out. I just kind of go through my day. And if I've got other things that are priorities in my life, I just take care of those first. If I have a commitment to my recovery, I do it. I don't skip that to write an article, and vice versa. And on that though, it doesn't necessarily change some of those voices sometimes, right? Those are still there about which one I'm doing, but I know, that I'm doing the right thing when I do that.
Let's actually a great example with like giving yourself space, priority, forgiving yourself if you need to prioritize something that's more important over a different commitment that you have. And then like the anxiety that can come from the hesitation with things that people like us experience. I'm going to share one thing that happened between you and me, and then it ties directly into what you were talking about when you were worried about letting Evan or JC and Iggy know that you're like ready to come back, or you might need another week. So you and we kind of committed to doing this like almost 3 weeks ago, and then I got busy getting all the other shows done. Didn't respond to a message or DM you for like a week and a half, and then I got into the cycle of like I'll DM him tomorrow. I can't do it right now. I'm too afraid. I feel weird. If he says he can't do it, then I got to go scramble and find someone else. I'd rather just not deal with that. And it sounded like when we talked before the show, we had DM'd a few times and the same sort of thing went through on your end, where you had forgotten to respond to something, this or that. You were dealing with life and the kind of anxiety about like, wow, what is the other person thinking across the screen about my tardiness or just inability to communicate right now. And then we talked and we both were like, no worries. I was feeling the same. And so I don't like the word delusion because it is so powerfully negatively charged, but it is an accurate word for like little micro delusions that people deal with, not even just in the world of mental health. If you're communicating with someone over text, eventually you're going to get the wrong context on something. You're going to interpret something the wrong way, and you'll have a little moment where you're reading things that are not reality. For me, I have like a lot of negatively perceived delusions where I think people are mad at me, where I think people are upset, where I'll DM someone big in the industry and I know they're busy and I know they don't have time to respond to everything all the time. They don't respond, and they did last week. And now, did I send too many messages? What's happening? Like, it's just so caustic and toxic. But it's a very common issue to run into. And I would like you just to, like, if you can, just share a little bit about stuff you deal with like that. I know you already did, and just chime in on that.
I mean, just with you, even when I first reached out to you, and I didn't share this part with you, but when I first reached out and you didn't message back, right? Like after a couple of days, like my mind is like, oh, Ronnie doesn't want me on the show. Like, yeah. I mean, that's like the first thing I go to, bro. And it's like, like, and then it's like, well, why would he want me on the show? Like, who the heck are you, Evan? You're nobody special.
Spirals down. Yeah.
He's got these other guys, these bigger guys, right? He's got these other guests, and like they're way farther in the industry. And so why would he want to fill you in with that? Like, whatever, right. Dude. It doesn't even matter. I just start thinking negatively. And then when you did respond, and then I don't respond right away. I'm kind of like, okay, here I am getting like upset that he didn't respond. And then I'm not even being that responsive to him. But it's funny because it's like our expectation and the actual like observation of things that happen, like what I fill that gap with, right? And it's like for you, I'm filling that gap pretty much with like grace and understanding, right? Like I'm like, even though I'm beating myself up, I'm also like, dude, Ronnie's busy. Like, I'm sure he will get back to me. Right? Like, I'm not mad at him. This is just how I talk to myself and so forth, right? So I fill that gap with like grace and understanding. But then for myself, I fill that gap with judgment. And I think it's funny because you're talking about the show. Like, I have no problem understanding other people and where they're coming from because I get it. I've been in tough places. I've struggled with certain things. I know life happens. Like, if you're late, if you're whatever, right? Like, I don't think somebody does those things on purpose. There's usually a reason. So I try to kind of fill that gap with some type of grace and understanding. But with myself, I'm the total opposite. No grace, no understanding, pure judgment, pure hatred, like negativity at its finest. Right. And I do that with everything, man. Like I do that with when I'm putting out some type of content, right? Like, can I include this because what might be said? Like, can I do this because people might think this or might think that, right? Like before I really even send a message, sometimes I get that.
Yeah. It's funny though. And I think that like the anticipatory dread that comes with that sort of thing can often be like, I missed a response here. Therefore, now they're probably thinking things and I am dreading engaging with this again. And then all of a sudden it just time passes and the conversation grows farther apart. And all it takes is a simple, like, hey, I'm sorry, I got busy. Like, my bad. I love you. Let's talk.
They're like not even thinking about it, right? Like they're like not even like you know, it's like, and it's a little bit of humility too, right? It's kind of like a self-obsession of like, it's all about me, you know,
Right.
like when this person's got, you know, Ronnie's got his life, JC's got his life. These other guys, you know, they're doing their shows. They've got enough on their plate that they're probably not even worried about any of what I'm feeling, not because they don't care, but just because they're human like I am. They have a life like I do. Like, you know, that's why. And so, oh man, but I think in the content side of things too, at least for me, that can really put me in a place of like paralysis. You know, that fear is like crippling where it's like, okay, well, now I'm just not going to do it at all. Right. Like, you know,
Yes.
I've overthought it so much that now I don't even want to put it out, you know, and like, that's crazy, you know, because if I go up and down like timelines and look at stuff, like people put out whatever they want. And sometimes even in that regard, as we're talking, Ronnie, like, I'm like, man, why can't I just put stuff out like that person? Like, why can't I have the fortitude and the strength and mental wherewithal to like not be afraid to put out what I want to say? Like, why am I so like every letter, everything has to be perfect? Like, you
Right.
know, and which is also funny too, because I don't even know that person. I don't really know how they feel. I just see what they're saying through the keyboard and it makes me feel a certain way.
Right.
And, you know, but I'm like, you know, why can't I just be that same way? Yet on both sides of it, there's some truth to it because they're doing it, but I also don't know what their own struggles are and what they're thinking of or why they're doing it. But I do struggle with that, you know, like, man, I just want to be able to put stuff out. Like, I know it has some value. I know everybody's not going to agree with it, but yet it's still hard for me sometimes to do it because I'm scared of the outcome, right? The anticipatory dread.
Right.
And even though I know, right, like everybody's wrong all the time, you know, whether it's, I mean, even sports betting, right? You got to be, if you're hitting 55, 60%, you're a guru.
Yeah.
That's barely half the time. So, but in a world of negativity and toxicity and trolling and wanting to judge when you're wrong, right? It's like that thing, right? The teacher writes 900 words on the chalkboard and one of them is wrong. And every student says something about the one that's wrong.
Right.
Nothing about the 99 that are right. And so filling that gap of those things happening, that's just not an easy thing to do. And for somebody like me who's, you know, negative and harsh and struggles with that, you know, self-worth and things like that, it's really hard to fill that gap.
Yeah, well, and it's not healthy to like fill that gap with things that you're just assuming out there. I watched a really interesting who was it? It was a Navy SEAL was doing an interview, I think, with Lex Friedman, and he asked him what the biggest like tip that he could give to regular people that the SEALs all use, and he talked about um prediction, I think, versus perception. And like if you're living your life and your viewpoint is all that matters to you, and you're just trying to like convince people of your opinion and so on and so forth, it's a waste of time because you're wrong, usually, because you have a very diluted and jaded viewpoint of the world based on your own experiences. Perspective is about saying, all right, well, I have my own opinions, but let me go listen to everyone else and let me engage with them and talk with them about what they care about and see if it aligns with my beliefs and then bring those in. And he says like that's how they warm up the people and for covert psyops like that, blah blah blah. But I watched that and I was like, oh, I parlay that directly to mental health. Like we all have our own prejudices and our own things that we think are how everything in the world operates this way because of my belief. I have had to fight through an ego on my end and a lot of coping mechanisms that are like borderline narcissism over the last 10 years. And as I like beat those down and got them under control, I realized that I'm not right about everything, not even close. And I used to feel that way. So anyway, it's my takeaway there. We're also at 48 minutes, and I try to keep these things at 30 minutes, so we're almost at double the time. I want to keep talking to you though, but for the sake of the viewers, I think we should probably wrap this up soon. Are there any other specific topics or thoughts or people that you want to shout out before we wrap this whole thing up?
No, man, I don't think so. I think shout it out the community, you know. Appreciate you, Ronnie. I mean, yeah, I could talk all night. It's good stuff. But yeah, I'll just say, like I think we try to, and I try to put our content out as something that isn't absolute, isn't right. It's just informative and hopefully creating a place where people can, converse back and forth and argue in the sports realm of things in a fun way of like, hey, this is what I think, right? Like, I mean, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, right? Everybody's got their take on not affecting Kyron at all, or, it's Blake's going to be the guy totally and Kyron disappears, right? And it's like, it's all speculation. It's all based on, what we've done in the past with fantasy, what we've seen happen, what we think about Sean McVay and his style, what we think about these two running backs. And hey, man, thank you, Dave and JC, man. Appreciate you guys popping in.
Sorry,
but like, that's what I'm saying. It's like, there's just so much. We all have our own takeaways on things, and yet we have no idea, right, what's going to happen until they get on the field and do those things. And so I think that's just kind of a nice example of like, having opinions and being strong and, but just being open to, hey, this is why they think that. And then as we know, it all unfolds one way or the other, or completely even different, where it's partially right on both sides. And so I think, I try to put out content that's like that too, right? I don't try to be absolute or it's this way or no way. This is just what I got from it, what I think, but I try to leave that open-ended part of like, I know this may not be the case. Like I'm not right. But yeah, man, I just appreciate, there's a lot of good people, man, that we have in the community. And I mean, I appreciate everybody that joins us on the shows. I mean, I could list a lot of different people, but anybody that's been on TSA that takes the time to come on and impart with us and share, it is truly appreciated. It's humbling by a lot of the people that come on. So just a big thank you to everybody that comes across our way and adds to our community and welcomes us. It's it matters to us. It means a lot. And I know we are very, very grateful, man.
Well, I am grateful for you guys. Again, that's at the Sports Affiliate on Twitter. And I'm going to leave everyone with one little bit of advice that I think you'll appreciate. In a certain sector of mental health stuff, there is a phrase called one day at a time. And if you are trying to change a habit or improve something in your life that has been a pattern leading up until like today, the worst thing you can do is think about how perfect you're going to be or how you're going to crush this over the next 2 or 3 weeks, or think about how it's going to affect you a month from now. Habit changing is hard. And if you just view it each day as like, my goal today is to not engage with that habit. Over time, you will build the resistance and barriers you need to break it. And that comes from the addiction and recovery community. It is, I would say, of all of the quotes that I heard repeatedly when I was going into group therapy and counseling under that umbrella, that was the one that stuck with me forever, because it's not just something that applies to addiction and alcohol, like recovery and all that stuff. It applies to just about every aspect of self-improvement. So forgive yourself. You're not going to bat 1,000 on everything, and try to change your life one day at a time.
Love it, man. Hey, one quick shout out, Bob Lung. Go make sure you get your Fantasy Football Expo tickets. We love Bob Lung. We love the Expo. Make sure to get your tickets for the 2024 Expo in August.
Yes, and if I see you there and you don't walk up and give me a hug, I'm going to be annoyed. I'm there for hugs. That's for you, Evan, and everyone else. It's all about spreading the love. Shout out to the Expo. Shout out to Evan, JC, Toronto. Thanks for chiming into the chat. For everyone else watching, please subscribe to the channel. It's brand new. I need you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks, Ronnie.
What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear, but I'm feeling foggy. My future seems hidden. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Evan. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's Mental Health Awareness